Tonight's question is simple but explosive. Is wicked for good secretly America under Trump? Fantasy, politics, authoritarian shenanigans, and a whole lot of symbolism America pretends isn't there. Stay tuned as we answer this question on this live stream review of the movie Insurrectionist. Welcome to the movie Insurrectionist. I am your host, Rashad, and welcome to our latest main live stream review. Ladies and gentlemen from around the world, brothers and sisters, I only have a question I want to ask you. Is wicked for good America under Trump commentary? I just saw the film yesterday and it was a bit bewildering, but I did watch it. However, before we get into that, I would like for you guys to go ahead and make sure that you are joining the movie Insurrectionist movement, where we break film down with culture, intelligence, and a little pettiness when required. So in order for us to do that and to keep this going, please hit the subscribe button, like the video, share it, click the bell icon, follow us on X, TikTok, and Amazon and Instagram, so we can go ahead and keep on doing these live streams and also videos for future content. Now, once we've taken care of that, let's go ahead and get to the insurrection. First, I'm indifferent to both Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, and I'm not here to talk about them personally. Some of my listeners may be saying, but you need to call out Cynthia Erivo for her disrespect for the FBA, fam. And I agree. I will call her out with another broadcast and discuss my grievances with Miss Erivo on another live. Be patient. I'm not here to talk about that. I haven't forgotten or forgiven some of her transgressions. However, for today, I want to keep the attention on her latest movie, so we'll discuss her personally another time. But today we are here to discuss The Wizard of Oz. And the Wizard of Oz universe has a long history of manufacturing symbolism to represent the era which it was created. Starting from the beginning, political commentary was pushed into the world as it was art created during the Gilded Age within American history. And this era was the beginning of the industrial age of America from about 1870 to 1900, when a large influx of American immigrants and small farms started to collapse and become obsolete due to large corporations that purchased them. And this, of course, was the era of the robin barons, individuals like Jay Gould, Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and of course, John G. Rockefeller. These men had questionable tactics and business that made them uber rich, and they went to the extreme in order to suppress the lower class. Men like Jay Gould famously said he could pay one half of the working class to kill the other half. And this, of course, was the political climate that produced The Wizard of Oz. And within the original story of The Wizard of Oz, which came out in 1899, each of these characters represented that era of the Gilded Age. They all were symbolic for what represented the Gilded Age. Starting off, of course, with Dorothy, the protagonist. And Dorothy, of course, according to the website Vantage News, the political and economic symbols hidden out inside The Wizard of Oz. Very good article to read if you want to check it out. But in it, it talks about the symbolism of all the original characters of The Wizard of Oz and what exactly do they symbolize. And like I said, this was written in 1899 during the time of the Gilded Age, which was between right after the end of slavery and the Civil War, going into the beginning of the 20th century. So Dorothy, the main character that you see on your screen right here, of course, is the novel's protagonist. And she represents the best of what is valued as the mythos of the American character. She's kind, shows spunk, she's level-headed, straightforward, and is willing to face the unknown to find answers to the issues that she faces upon her. Of course, later on in The Wiz, this character takes that of a black woman, played by Diana Ross. But in 1899, of course, they had a young white woman named Julie Garden that played her. And that was what that is what Dorothy was supposed to symbolize. Moving on to the next character, we got the Scarecrow. Not the Scarecrow from the Dark Knight movies, for those of you that watch Batman, but the original Scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz films. And this Scarecrow represents those farmers. Like I mentioned before, the Gilded Age was a time where you saw shrinking small businesses and small farmers in particular. They were being gobbled up by large corporations that bought up all these farms. So you would have one farmer that would do all of this mass production for wheat, for fruit, vegetables, et cetera, and it pushed out and made all the small farmers obsolete. So the Scarecrow is supposed to be a representation of those farmers. In the minds of the rich, farmers didn't have any brains. Why are these small farmers still engaged in some of these Midwest regional activities of small farming when they can't even feed themselves and their families? Hardly. So they generally saw small farmers as irrational, uneducated, ignorant, a character that you see with the Scarecrow, hence he doesn't have a brain. And that is how individuals that were a part of the robber baron class looked at the small farmer, and not just the small farmer, but the small worker generally, as someone that was without a brain. They were ignorant to the changes of time, and they're trapped in a bygone era. That's the Scarecrow. The next character, of course, is none other than, you guessed it, the Tin Man. Now, the Tin Man is said to represent a dehumanized and mistreated factory worker. And they kind of actually showed this in the movie. through no fault of his own, had his own self-worth chipped away by outside forces. He represents the factory workers who were suffering in the economy of that time during the Gilded Age, and was even covered in rust when Dorothy, of course, in the Scarecrow first encountered him, representing the high levels of unemployment that were prevalent in the 1890s. So one of the things that happened during this time is of course, many of these farmers had to leave the city. They had to leave the rural parts of the South and the Midwest and go to some of the more industrious parts of the country. And you saw intense competition for labor. And you had all these people fighting each other so they can get themselves a job working at a textile factory, steel mill, rubber factory, which came on a little bit later, et cetera, et cetera. And the Tin Man is supposed to be a representation of that. Which brings us, of course, to my favorite character, most humorous character, in my opinion. The Cowardly Lion. Put him up, put him up, put him up. So the Cowardly Lion. Now this character is actually interesting because a Cowardly Lion, unlike the Tin Man or the Scarecrow, are not based off of American archetypes, but it's also based on a real person. And the person that it's supposed to be based off of was a politician by the name of William Jennings Bryan. And Winnie Jennings Bryan was a hero of the Populist movement at that time. And he was even referred to as a lion in the press. And he was a huge supporter of the free silver movement and moving away from which was a movement to move away American currency from the gold standard. Because there was a time where the US dollar was backed by gold, which now it's not backed by anything, but there was a time where the US dollar was actually backed by gold. And there's still some economies in the world that still do that. But he was an advocate for backing up the American dollar by gold. And just like the Cowardly Lion, in front of the public, he was all about that action. He was about telling everybody about what he would do, what he would say, how he's going to stick it to the president and other members of government. But behind the scenes, whenever he was pressed, he broke down and he cowered and he gave in every single time. So this Cowardly Lion figure represents William Jennings Bryan, who I'm talking about. But also, the Cowardly Lion represents just politicians during that time period. And I would even take it a step further, many of the politicians that we have still today, that when they step up in front of the public, they talk loud, they sit up and they give their largest roar about what they're going to do to change the economy, change the status quo. For those of us in the FBA community, what they're going to do specifically for us. But in today's world, it seems like they're telling us straight out what they're not going to do for us. The Democrats and Republicans, when it comes to black people, don't sound too much different. But the Cowardly Lion is definitely an example of that. But behind the scenes, although they tell the people how they're going to lower the taxes, how they're going to make sure that we have proper health care, they fixed the water supply over in Flint, Michigan. But then when they step to their paymasters, they give in and they blink in a game of chicken, just like the Cowardly Lion. They have no courage. And we move on to the next arc, the next character. Or actually, this is not the character, but actually one of the most important props, which is the red ruby slippers of Dorothy. Now, this is a very interesting one because the slippers, the slippers are supposed to be a representation of the farmer's desire to have money and be tied to both silver and gold. So the red ruby slippers are supposed to represent the poor's desire to get themselves out of poverty, to work themselves up by their bootstraps, and to have what the aristocracy has, to get what they have. That's what the red ruby slippers are supposed to represent in the land of Oz. And in our world, that's what they're supposed to represent. And then you have the Emerald City, of course, which is where Oz actually, which is the headquarters of Oz, which is supposed to be representation of Washington, D.C. and the White House, of course. It even looks like it to a certain extent. The seals of political power. You also have the greenback dollar. You got Toto there raising up. But this is where the wizard resides. And of course, the wizard himself is supposed to represent, of course, the president of the United States. So during the Gilded Age, the wizard was the president back then. And in today's world, the wizard is the president. Now, of course, this is somebody that claims to have absolute power, claims to be omnipotent and know everything and can do everything. But the truth of the matter is, it's all an illusion. It's a magic trick. When you pull back the curtain, the wizard is someone that has to follow orders of other people. And you literally see that in the movie that's out right now, in the Wicked movie. You literally see that in Wicked for Good, that the Wizard of Oz is not as powerful as he claims that he is, not as moral as he claims that he is. He's a very flawed man. He's a devious man. And in fact, you can go as far to sit up and say that the wizard isn't as powerful as he claims to be. There's people behind the scenes that are more powerful than he is. And this was the truth for the presidents that were around during the Gilded Age. And this is definitely the case for presidents that we see today in terms of the martial orders they have when it comes to Wall Street and other entities that stop them from doing certain things. So Hollywood has always used witches, monsters, and magic to talk about authoritarianism, social division, scapegoating, the fear of others, and who America chooses to demonize when it's time to get tough. All right. So these are some of the ways in terms of how this particular movie, Wicked for Good, actually parallels the Trump administration. Because if you actually watch this film, they definitely have symbolism that represents authoritarianism, social division, scapegoating, the fear of the other, and who America chooses to demonize when times get tough. Oh, I am so sorry, guys. There's one person I forgot to talk about. Two people, actually. My bad. And that, of course, is, let me find her. Let me find her. Did I put up a slide of her? I think I might have missed it. Ah, I missed it. Oh, there it is. Okay. The witch. Of course, the witch. We got to talk about the witch. We got to speak about the witch. Not Glinda, but actually the Wicked Witch, who was actually the most important character in the entire story, which is why the musical in the book, Wicked, had to retell her story to humanize or humanize her as much as you possibly can. But the Wicked Witch, and there's two Wicked Witches, the Wicked Witch of the East and the Wicked Witch of the West, their interpretations, and they represent the major financial political interests that held sway over American politics. So when Dorothy's house falls on the Wicked Witch of the East, it's a reference to smashing Wall Street's power, and her sister, the Wicked Witch of the West, symbolizes the financial elite who live in the western region of the country, such as the railroad magnates, bankers, etc. And that is what the witch is actually supposed to represent in the Wizard of Oz. Because during the time, actually in the Gilded Age, one of the things that you saw, as you do now, is that this was the first time where you actually saw Wall Street, and you saw many of these robber barons, these individuals who had mounds and mounds of cash. They started attributing and obtaining influence over politicians, state politicians, local politicians, and then eventually the White House itself. And these individuals were in the banking industry. They were also in the railroad industry, the oil industry. All right. Like Standard Oil, the textile industry. All of these things were connected. These industries were connected to Wall Street. And ultimately, they had power over the entire country and the politicians that run our country. And that is what the Wizard of Oz is actually supposed to represent. Now, let's talk about the current film. Not the past movie, but the current movie, Wicked for Good. And how is all of this an allegory for Trump's America? Well, it's very simple. Putting this into the context of 2025 as opposed to 1895, you see that witches, monsters, magics, and magic are all allegories for authoritarianism, social division, scapegoating, the fear of others, and who America chooses to demonize when its time gets tough. So you have the witch, the wicked witch. From the moment she's born, she's an outcast in her entire family because she's green. And she's not the biological daughter of her father, the man who actually raised her. And there's some issues with that because I didn't really like how they actually represented the woman that played her mom. I thought that was a bit stereotypical. They had her as a bed wench and as well as a floozy and a Jezebel. Very stereotypical for a black woman, the way they portrayed her. And there's spoiler alerts for those of you who haven't seen it. But the way they portrayed her, this is how they presented her to the entire world. You can juxtapose that to what you see online, where you have many of these same kind of women, these swirlers. And by the way, her husband was white, by the way. Many of these same kind of women, these swirlers, they're out here and They present themselves as Jezebels. They present themselves as individuals that are not really respected by white society. And the children, especially if the child is from another relationship, is definitely not to be respected. And that's exactly what you saw in this movie. You definitely saw that. And by the way, the other part of it is that the Wizard of Oz is supposed to be the witch's father on top of that, which I thought was kind of interesting and convenient. But I digress. So, but we deep dive into the main discussion, and let's talk about more of the symbolism about the good witch, the good versus the wicked label that you see within this movie. And America loves labels. Trump era America, even more. You're either a patriot or a traitor, a hero or a villain, a witch or a wizard. Simple labels for a complex world, and all these things sound familiar. One of the other things that we see in this movie too is you saw a great deal of propaganda that was being pushed. In this movie, there was a propaganda machine that demonized the witch, the wicked witch, who was green. And let's be real, green is supposed to be a metaphor for black people. So everywhere she went, she was despised, even though she didn't do anything to anyone, but folks still told everyone that she was bad. And the good witch, Glinda, the white witch, the white blonde hair, blue eyed witch, was seen as being good, regardless of all the underhanded things that she was doing to her supposed friend and to others. And she wanted things to be that way. And the system rigged it where they demonized the good witch, the wicked witch, even though she was trying to save the animals that were being persecuted. And these animals were being locked up in cages, which of course is a metaphor for what's happening right now. Immigrants being rounded up and imprisoned to be sent overseas or back home or wherever. And even though she was doing these good deeds, it wasn't respected by her father, the wizard. And the wizard made it very clear that even if you tell people the truth about me, they're still not going to listen because they want to believe that I am their savior. Sounds like MAGA. Sounds exactly like them people from MAGA. And that is what I was looking at. Propaganda and the manufacturing of fear. How many times you guys heard in the current climate that we're in right now that if you don't vote for Trump, if you don't vote for the Democrats, you're voting for Trump. Trump is going to put us back in slavery. Trump is going to deport us, for those of us who are FBA. These are all the things that we're told. And in that same movie, this movie I just saw, you had the powers that be that were trying to convince the wicked witch and the people to do the same exact thing because we know what's in your best interest. You don't know what's in your own best interest. The power of propaganda and manufactured fear. The next thing that I saw was power, personality cults, and narrative control. The leaders in WIC for good don't just want power, they want narrative control. They want to define what's good, and they want people to applaud loyalty and obedience. Now, how is this any different from what's going on right now? The attack on education, on history. This whole entire narrative that us as black people, we weren't slaves, we were indentured servants, what they say in Texas and over in Florida. You have cultish personalities, although they're saying things that are completely untrue. people gobble it all up because it makes them feel good about themselves. Charlie Kirk can sit up and tell lies about how DEI prefers black pilots when the reality of it is that whether you're black, white, Hispanic, or green, you have to go through the same requirements in order for you to become a pilot. That's how things work. That's how things have always worked. But in the era of Trump, up is down, down is up, and people don't necessarily have to tell the truth. All they have to do is make things appeal to a person's fears. Cultive personality cults and narrative control. In the current movie, you also saw the outsider, the scapegoat. Every political empire needs a villain. And in this movie, certain characters are branded wicked simply for being themselves. Now, of course, during the Trump era, black folks, immigrants, Muslims, LGBTQ folks, activists, everybody's getting it right now. Even liberal white folks are getting it. But in this particular movie, the main villain, or the main person who was considered to be the outsider, was indeed the green witch, and also the animals. The animals who were intelligent, who were smart, capable at one point, and their voices were taken away from them because they didn't want to go along with what the wizard wanted to happen in Oz. So just like today, the Trump administration doesn't like immigrants, don't like Muslims, don't like folks from the LGBTQ community. But the main trophy and the main group that they always go after, regardless of any of those, is us, black people, specifically those of us who are foundational black Americans. We are the scapegoat. We are the green queen, although in this case it's being represented by a tether. But that's what the green queen is supposed to represent, is us. So I'll tell you guys this, and what my reaction was to Wicked for Good. I was sitting in the theater like, so we're doing political metaphors again. We're doing authoritarian allegories with sprinkles of Broadway musicals again. So we're out here making another movie that I know that the suspected white supremacists will look at and they will say, this is too woke. And I'll tell you the truth. I wasn't really a crazy fan of this movie. I thought, to me, it was boring, it was corny, it was pretentious. But I can't deny the modern commentary within this film. The best fantasy always has a message, and this one felt like a big green mirror held up to America. But some of you guys, you may disagree, or you might agree. So please drop your thoughts in the chat. Do you think Wicked for Good is political commentary? Did you catch any of the hidden symbols that I missed? Which character reminds you of real life politics? And did the story feel like America under Trump to you? I give you guys a couple of seconds to go ahead and do that, and then we'll chop it up a little bit. This is the movie Insurrectionist. And if you're vibing with this breakdown, smash the like button. Like you trying to escape the Emerald City, share the live stream, comment, and smash that subscribe button to join the movie Insurrectionist Rebellion, where each and every movie gets decoded with culture, truth, and Black historical context. We'll get back in 1 second. Okay, we're back. This is Movie Insurrectionist. Hope you guys made some comments. But in the meantime, if you want as well, there is a link for Zoom calls in the description area. There are links in the Zoom calls in the description area. You can go ahead and call in, give me a call. We can chop it up a little bit, talk a little bit more about this movie and whether you think what I'm saying is correct, incorrect. Give me if you have a take in terms of, does this motion picture Wicked for Good, is Wicked for Good America under Trump commentary? Is Wicked for Good under Trump commentary? This is the movie review. Whether or not you agree or disagree, please go ahead and hit me up on the Zoom call, and we can go ahead and chop it up about this. If nobody calls in, then I'll go ahead and call it a night. This is Movie Insurrectionist. If you like this program, please smash the like button. If you're trying to escape the Emerald City, share the live stream, comment, and smash the subscribe button to join the Movie Insurrectionist Rebellion, where each movie gets decoded with culture, truth, and Black historical context. You may have to refresh your screen. If you don't see the description, please refresh your screen. If you don't see the Zoom link in the description, we just added the Zoom link just now. So if you go ahead and refresh your screen, you should be able to see the Zoom link. We can go ahead and we can chop it up a little bit. Waiting for some people to call in. If we don't have anyone calling in tonight, then we'll wrap this up. This will be the end of this live stream. A few more minutes. If no one has anything to say, then we'll go ahead and wrap this up for tonight. You would need to refresh the screen in order for you to see the new Zoom link in the description section of the page. All right, I think I want to wrap this up. No one wanted to call in today in order to talk about this, so I'll go ahead and I'll wrap this up. We talked a little bit about this particular film. And as I said before, I wasn't particularly hyped to go see this movie because I'm not the target audience, but I do understand that the Wizard of Oz universe is always an allegory for the current political climate. And this movie is no different. The original one was for the Gilded Age, and the one that we see today is an allegory for Trumpism and MAGA in the 21st century. So we're going to close this tonight, and I'm going to say a couple of things. So fantasy isn't just fantasy. In Hollywood, as fallacious as they are, has been trying to warn us for years, and Wicked for Good is another chapter in America's political fairy tale. So I thank you guys all for watching. I thank you for engaging, and I thank you for thinking deeper. I am Rashad, the movie Insurrectionist, and remember, the theatrical release will never be televised. Good night. Stay sharp, stay conscious, and stay insurrected.